You're listening to Tassie Encounters Moments on Faith FM, and we're coming to you from Tasmania, right across Australia. Each weekday on Tassie Encounters, you can hear what the Bible says about past, current and future events. You can learn how to study the Bible more effectively. You can get to know who God is, why we're here and where we're going. And you can experience personal encounters with Jesus. I'm your host, Jason Cook, and today David Leo is back in the studio with us. Welcome, David.
Thanks. Good to be here.
Moving too fast.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
Do you move too fast, David?
Well, not physically. I wish I could. Those days are long and gone.
Playing rugby?
Yes. Yeah. So we started that conversation yesterday, and we asked the question, does it seem like time's moving way too fast? And I became a bit more concerned about it when kids started telling me that when they started saying, time goes too fast. I was thinking, no, that's for adults to say, not kids.
Traditionally, it has always been kids find time goes slow.
Correct.
And adults find time goes fast. I mean, that's how it's always been.
That's how it's always been. Yeah. Because, and the theory was because we take on more responsibilities as we get older. Yes. And so time goes faster. But when kids are doing it, you think, there's something wrong here, And yesterday we discussed some theories that could possibly be going on. We talked about attention economy and that everyone's after attention, and because attention is found a lot online and things like that, we find the average 8 to 10 hours on the screen is stealing a lot of time because it feels like you're being productive, but you're not. And 8 to 10 hours can just disappear just like that, and there's nothing that's come from it. And I wanted to talk about this thing that psychologists they've given terminology to a thing called time distortion. They call it time distortion. So
the way our brain perceives time, I guess.
Right, that's right. And one of the things we kind of touched on yesterday was the way our brain measures time. It's not the way we've been conditioned. We don't necessarily measure time as 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, by the clock that we've been given in our lives. From our perception, from our perspective, we measure time by timestamps and significant memories in our lives. Now, I mentioned yesterday that my teenage years felt really slow, but I did so much. But again, there's a lot of changes happening in life. I moved from one country to another. Spent a lot of time with friends, great times, some times that my parents wouldn't say were so great. And, but there were lots of changes going on, so it felt really slow. But when you're not getting any timestamps, time can seem really fast. Things like spending 5 hours binge watching on Netflix. That's not a timestamp. You're sitting there going, one show after the other. But 10 years from now, you're not going to say, remember that show I watched on Netflix? That had this effect on me,
I'm going to ask you a question to see whether it reveals anything.
Okay.
I'm asking it because I know it about myself.
All right.
If you've ever watched a program or a series on Netflix or YouTube or whatever, and then you've gone back and watched it again later, might be a year later or 2 years later, have you ever noticed, I missed that last time?
Oh, yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't remember that happening.
Absolutely. Yeah. No,
so the first time you're watching, it's almost as if you're not really fully paying attention.
Right.
And I'm wondering if that's half of the reason too. We're not really paying attention. It's just almost just like background noise.
And that's a good way of putting it. It's like sitting there and, okay. I think a good example for Gen Xers like Jason and myself, I think a good example for us is, how much can you grew up in the church like I did, didn't you? Mm-hmm. How much can you remember from sitting in the audience in your classrooms at school and the information that were given to us in all those sermons that we've sat through? One of the memorable ones, right? And so the memorable ones is when the teacher said something really significant and that really resonated with you. Or for me, when I was 13 and the preacher said, I can hear this in Psalm 1. I even know who the preacher is, but he said, we're all like the Israelites. We all sin and we need to repent. And just like the Israelites, they complained about wanting to go back to Egypt. We often are like that as well, and in my mind, I was thinking, well, I like Egypt. I want to play rugby for the rest of my life. So when I'm 17 and I'm old enough to tell my parents, I'm going to Egypt. You know, and I remember that sermon because at 13, somehow, some way, I had made up my mind that the rest of my life is going to be doing something I really enjoy, which is playing on the rugby field. That was something I really enjoyed, you know, the camaraderie and all that kind of stuff. So
it's memories and emotions that put a timestamp in that you remember.
Yeah. So even further, I don't want to get delve in too deep, but there's a part of our brain, a physical, biological part of our brain called the amygdala, which is what responds to, I think we often hear the word flight,
yep.
And there's another one. I can't remember what the third one is, but this is the instinct that we get in that particular time. You know, when a big scary kangaroo jumps in front of you on a hike and it's taller than you and it looks musclier than you, you're either going to prepare to confront it or you're going to say, "Oh, I'm getting out of here."
I reckon the kangaroo would jump in front of you, Dave, and say, "Well, I'm going to leave that one alone. I'm going to leave that one alone."
Yeah. I don't know if the kangaroo's got an amygdala, but that responsive emotional thing, it responds to that. And there's another part of our brain, which I can't remember, starts with H. Can you remember, Jason? No, but that records it. That becomes a timestamp. So whether it's traumatic, whether it's an exciting time, whether it's a sad time, those timestamps become significant parts of our timeline and and becomes part of our identity. And so I suppose the point that I'm trying to make here is the less timestamps we have in our lives, the less it feels like we've done anything productive. The less it feels like we've created memories. So if somebody grew up just playing on their on the phone, you know, it's scary. It's scary to see that there are 1-year-olds that are familiar with how to manipulate an iPad. That's a scary thing to think about. But if this kid grew up on the iPad and they spent 8 hours a day and not having any significant memories, that's a sad way of living. You're basically just like a twig just drifting on the water, you know, and this is not what we're created to be. You know, we're created to live and to understand our purpose, to understand our value, and praise the Lord, He actually has a plan in motion and something that He's had since the beginning, and we're gonna touch on that.
It's called the lost art of Sabbath.
The lost art of Sabbath. Right.
We should get into that topic.
Yes. So when the psychologists call this time distortion, Jesus is calling it rest. You know, like don't see it from a warped perspective. Let's see time as it looks, as it should be. Put you into a rhythm. 6 days, 1 day of rest. 6 days, 1 day of rest. And Sabbath, I believe, in the modern world is the disruption to us just drifting along like nothing's happening. So
it's interesting that term disruption has been a popular term over the last 10 to 15 years in terms of industry and technology. Everyone's after the next big thing that's going to disrupt, and I guess AI has been the latest one. But this is a disruption in a different sense.
Yes.
This is a disruption that's really good for us, to disrupt the pattern of endless cycles of monotony and work and, you know, just everything.
And even disconnection. You know, yesterday you talked about, you know, like Alan or your wife getting upset that, you know, you'll spend time on devices. Like, hey, I'm right here. Engage with me. You know, even that disrupts our temptation to be alone with our device. You know, it says, "Hey, no, get together as a community." And the crux of it is this. I'm not going to get too much into the Bible study, and I hope you're a faithful Faith FM listener, because you'll probably be familiar with the Sabbath. And if you're not, keep listening, because you'll come across it. But basically, the crux of it is when God created the earth in 6 days, the Bible said He rested on the Sabbath, and then He gave an instruction: you too, every seventh day, you rest on the Sabbath and respect and honor the Sabbath, so that we will always remember who the creator of the world is. And so that's the origins of the Sabbath. I want to ask you, Jason, what are some of the, outside of the church, outside of the Seventh-day Adventist Church or anybody that observes the Sabbath, what do you think is the common thing that happens on weekends? The weekend break.
Sport.
Oh, yes, that's a big one. There's a lot of sport on Saturdays. I know that. I found that annoying growing up in a Seventh-day Adventist home.
I think many people tend to catch up on all their housework duties and things like that.
Yep.
Is there something else that you're thinking of that I'm not?
Shopping.
Shopping's
a big one.
Yeah.
Catching up with friends. You know, I see that with my friends that are still single and have that freedom to go and catch up with their other single friends. They use the weekend to hang out and catch up with friends.
Going to a movie or watching something.
Going to a cafe
or Netflix. Yeah.
Or they go out to the pubs and the clubs, you know, in the evenings, and that's how they try to unwind. But what about for the churchgoers? You know, we know this, that Jesus said, keep the Sabbath. But I'm a pastor, Jason. Sometimes I'm planning my whole week to come to the Sabbath. And there are people like yourself that is not a pastor, but you do pastoral work in your local church, and there are others like you. So what advice would we give them then? Because they're still busy on the day that Jesus said to rest, right? You're still kind of preparing small group Bible studies. I've seen you at Rosny doing the music, getting the things ready for music and whatnot. There's rehearsals on a Friday night. Have we switched off?
Yeah, it's a challenge, but it is also different. Like even a rehearsal on a Friday night is actually still entering into a different space and a different mode. Yeah, you know, like we have the Sabbath beginning at sunset on Friday, and often that's about the time where we rehearse for our Sabbath and it's worship service. And so it actually begins the Sabbath at that point. So you're actually entering into that mode of connection with God. And so even though you are physically doing different things, it can still be a time of connection.
So everyone there is volunteering, right? They're all volunteers here. And so when it comes to Sabbath, one of the big things that is important in slowing it down, one of the great things about Sabbath is you come to a community. So you're with other people. For some, they might find it a challenge. I know this for a fact. Some young people have shared with me that, man, I'd rather just stay home and, get Uber Eats and watch Netflix than be around other people because they exhaust me. Whereas, sitting in front of a phone or a device doesn't. But on Sabbath, you're intentionally with the community. You're volunteering your services. So volunteering either by what Jason just mentioned, what he does at church or whatever you may do. But the fact that you're volunteering and you're wanting to serve others is a very important factor into disrupting that subconscious day-to-day living,
It takes the focus away from me and what I want to do every day onto something else.
That's right. And then there's other voluntary things these are timestamps in my life, by the way, Jason. Somebody said to me that the first time that they realized that I was a good speaker or a confident speaker was at a nursing home. Because they said I was 9 years old at the time, and they asked me to read this passage. And they said when I read the passage, I read it with good pace and expression and things like that. And so from that point on, he said, that's why I started to get you involved in more things up the front of the church. And I'd ask you to come with me to a thing at Pathfinder. Do you remember taking worship when you were 11? I was like, no. He was like, yeah, I got you to do a worship service. And I was like, wow, look, okay. So going to a simple thing like going to a nursing home or visiting someone that you just think, oh, I haven't seen this person for a long time. Just dropping in and saying hello on a Sabbath. Going out to nature, mate, Tasmania, you can just drive 20 minutes and half an hour and you're out at the greatest spots ever. But being out in nature and just getting your mind out of what you do on the daily puts you back into slow motion. We're speaking about rugby before, and there's something I think I loved rugby so much was because of this thing they call it flow state now. I don't know what to call it back then.
Yeah.
But there was this thing that would happen in the game where you've practiced this move over and over again, and during the game, you execute that move, and it's as if the world slows down. You know, like you can see what the opponent's doing. You can read how all the teams are functioning, where they're running, and
apparently that's actually very good for us to enter into that flow state.
Yeah,
because we become totally focused on just that being, that
in that moment,
experiencing. And I think, in a way, there are things that even on like that. For me, that's how it can be with music and worship. Have you ever experienced that when you're preaching?
Yeah, preaching and even music.
Yeah,
playing guitar. And one of my friends that does coaching, he does coaching for psychological coaching for athletes. We were talking about this, and he said, "Yeah, Dave, because did you know the phenomena is that this is the sweet spot? They say that flow state is the sweet spot from repetitive practice and enjoying yourself. So we often say practice stinks, you know, like." And I didn't really like training, but coach said, if you don't train, you're not playing. So, you know, we turn up for training, but when it moves, it moves. And when you're practicing your song or something over and over again, and then you play it, and then, you know, like you don't even remember there are people there. You're just, it's you now. It's you and God and whatever that's going on. But when you hit that sweet spot, there's something about that. And I thought, man, that's Sabbath. We're practicing Sabbath over and over and over again. And the moment flow state, whatever game day looks like, you know, it could be for you. You've shared this quite often on radio. When you get the devastating news, you're diagnosed with cancer. At that moment, flow state comes in. You know, I've been practicing the peace in Jesus for so long. At this moment, I can either be really depressed and just say the world is hopeless and whatnot, but because of the repetitive flow state kicks in and says, I'm going to follow Jesus and see where he guides me in the storm and takes me and whatever, you know. But in this moment that we're living in, where time is moving so fast and we feel like life's slipping away from us, man, I challenge you, practice Sabbath. Have a look at Sabbath and start practicing some of these things.
We had a text marked out that I don't think we've read.
Oh yes, please, could you read it? Mark 2, verse 27.
It says, and he said to them, this is Jesus speaking, the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath.
Man, praise the Lord. So that whole thing from creation, from the beginning, the plan was not to make the Sabbath so that a human being could fit into it. He made it so it would work for us, that it would make us realize who our Creator is and that we have a purpose and value in life.
Awesome. Stay tuned for our book offer, which is coming up in a moment.
This program is made possible by the support of Adventist World Radio.
Our book off today is Live More Happy, Scientifically Proven Ways to Lift Your Mood and Your Life by Darren Morton. Darren Morton offers an easy-to-read and practical guide on how you can lift how you feel every day. Over the past decade, neuroscience, positive psychology and lifestyle medicine have exploded as areas of cutting-edge study, research and healthcare. The research indicates that almost half of your enduring happiness can be influenced by your daily choices and habits. So this is how you do it. Wherever you are on the feeling scale, you can lift your mood and you will likely lift your well-being in the process. So Darren covers a lot of different topics in this book.
It's a great book.
I've actually been through this and done his course as well. And he talks about a lot of different things that we're going to be talking about this week as well. So that's Live More Happy. Text us in TEM70 to 0488 880891. That's TEM70. Text it in to 0488 880891. As we go out today, we do hope that you have learned from our discussion on the Sabbath today. And this is a song called God Rested by Andrew Peterson. May you encounter Jesus more today, and do join us again tomorrow.
So they took his body down, the man who said he was the resurrection Sabbath fell, they shrouded him in linen. They dressed him like a wound. The rich men and the women, they laid him in the tomb. 6 days shall you labor, the seventh is the Lord's. And 6 he made the earth and all the heavens, but he rested on the seventh. God rested. He said that it was finished, and the seventh day he blessed it. God rested. So they laid their hopes away. They buried all the dreams about the kingdom he proclaimed, and they sealed them in the grave. As a holy silence fell on all Jerusalem, but the Pharisees were restless. Pilate had no peace. Peter's heart was reckless. Mary couldn't sleep. But God rested. "6 days shall you labor, the seventh is the Lord's. And 6 he made the earth and all the heavens, but he rested on the seventh. God rested. He worked till it was finished, and the seventh day he blessed it. He said that it was good, and the seventh day he blessed it. God rested. Sun went down, the Sabbath faded, the holy day was done, and all creation waited.
This program has been made possible by the support of Adventist World Radio.